Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good day to everyone. Thank you for watching this recording. As I mentioned in previous class, this lecture will be conducted asynchronously, where I already pre-recorded this video, and I hope that you can watch this recording before our next class. So in this class, we will continue our discussion on the next topic, which is theoretical and measurement issues in trade psychology. Please bear in mind, this topic is still under part 1, which is the dispositional domain of personality. Okay, before we begin, let's have a brief revision on what we have learned in previous classes. Okay, we've talked about personality traits, and first and foremost, I think in the last 2 weeks, we have discussed on the two basic formulation of personality traits, which is basically how personality psychologists define what personality traits means. Okay, as we discussed in class, there are two approaches, or there are two schools of thought whereby psychologists or personality psychologists themselves do not have basically one particular approaches or definition that they agreed upon, which are internal causal properties and descriptive summaries. Some personality psychologists believe that personality traits is only the descriptive summaries. On the other hand, some personality psychologists believe that personality traits is the internal causal factors on what our behavior is. Okay, what we behave is basically based on because of our personality traits. And then we look at the ACT frequency formulation, whereby personality psychologists who subscribe to the descriptive summaries conducted research on ACT frequency formulation. And next, we look at the identification of the most important personality traits. We've discussed on 3 approaches, which are lexical approach, which based on language. Secondly, we look at statistical approach, which based on the statistical formula and calculation to identify which among all of those traits are important. And lastly, we look at the theoretical approach, whereby important personality traits being defined or being categorized by a certain theory. And lastly, we look at the taxonomies of personality, whereby we look at 4 models of personality traits. First one, we look at Eysenck hierarchical model, and then we look at 16 personality factors by Cattell, and then we look at the Wiggins circumplex, the 2 aspects of interpersonal relationship, our personality traits, which look at the status and love. And lastly, we look at the most famous and the most common one being used most of the people, which are the 5-factor model. So those are basically some revisions on what we have discussed in previous classes. In this class, we are going to look into 2 issues surrounding personality traits, which are theoretical issues and measurement issues. Under theoretical issues, we will be discussing 5 aspects. The first one is meaningful differences between individuals. Secondly, we look at consistency of personality traits over time. Third, we will look at the consistency of personality traits across different situations. And next, we are going to look at person-situation interaction. And lastly, we're going to discuss about aggregation from theoretical issues of personality traits. Next, in the second part of this lecture, we are going to discuss on the issues surrounding the measurement of personality traits. How can we identify, how can we evaluate individuals' personality traits? We are going to look at the issues of carelessness, the issues of faking on questionnaires, the issues of responses, and lastly, the issues of Barnum's statements. Okay, first let's look at theoretical issues surrounding personality traits. Okay, in this part, we're going to look at the 3 assumptions of theories of personality traits, and then how these assumptions also consider as issues in theoretical perspective of personality traits. Okay, in this part, like I mentioned just now, theoretical issues, we're going to discuss on meaningful differences between individuals. We're going to discuss about consistency of personality traits over times. Next, consistency of personality traits across different situations, and person-situation interaction, which is considered under consistency across situation, as well as aggregation. Okay, First, what we need to understand is personality traits. Under this perspective, under this theory, the theory share three important assumptions. Okay, which means that they assume, personality psychologists assume that most of the times or all of the times when we want to understand personality, from personality trait perspective, there are meaningful differences between individuals, between me and you, between you and your friends, between you and your siblings. There are always meaningful difference in terms of personality. Okay, even though you are coming from the same family, or even you are twins, there are always differences in terms of personality, meaningful differences. And the second assumption is consistency over time. Our personality traits is basically relatively permanent. Remember when we discussed it on what personality means, we look at one of the aspects is permanent or relatively enduring. Okay, it's enduring over times. So if you are someone who are aggressive, most of the time you are aggressive. If you are someone who are extrovert, most of the time you are extrovert, regardless of the time, whether it's now, 2 months from now, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. If you have that personality traits, it is consistent over times. Similarly, personality traits also consistent across situation. Okay, if you are in classroom, if you are aggressive, you will show the characteristic of aggressive people. If you are in a social events, if you have personality traits which is aggressive, you will show aggressive behavior. Okay, in different situation, if you have that or those kind of personality traits, you will always demonstrate, behave, feel and think in that way because of your personality traits. Okay, now in the consistency across situation as well, we are going to discuss how personality psychologists explain that why there are interaction between our personality and the situation that we are living or that we are currently occupying. So how those situation and our personality traits are interacting to influence our behavior, and we look at how personality psychologists try to understand this different situation and with regards to our personality based on the aggregation or average of our behavior or tendency of our behavior. Okay, so why the assumption of personality traits become one of the issues? Okay, because of what? We are not measuring this. Instead, they assume that all of our personality is different. Okay, it's different, it's unique to me, unique to you, unique to everyone else. So it's basically because it's an assumption, it's also become one of the issues. Why? Because these are debated. Because sometimes there are personality traits which are unique. If you remember the levels of personality analysis at the universal levels, at the individual levels, at the uniqueness levels, so there are some personality traits which are universal. However, from personality trait perspective, there are always differences in terms of degrees of how high, how much or how low someone possesses that a certain personality traits. Okay, in this perspective, meaningful differences between individuals, trait psychologists are primarily interested in determining the ways in which people are different from each other. Okay, so the main focus of personality traits perspective is to look at individual differences. Any meaningful way in which people differ from each other may potentially be identified as personality traits. If let's say I am more talkative than you, okay, and more talkative than all of the other peoples, then talkativeness is considered as one of my personality traits. If say for example you are someone who are very extrovert, adventurous, okay, if compare between you and your friends, comparing between you and your siblings, comparing between you and everyone else, you are having the highest adventurous perspective, you are the most extrovert. So extroversion or adventurous become your personality traits. Why? Because the focus of personality personality trait perspective is to look at individual differences. Trait psychology, sometimes people call also differential psychology. Why? Because it emphasizes on the study of differences among people. Okay, how dissimilar, how unique we are as compared to others. The traits takes a quantitative approach. Okay, the trait perspective, personality psychology who follow this perspective, so they mostly use quantitative research to identify, to understand personality traits, which emphasize how much an individual differs from an agreed upon average. Okay, say for example, on average, aggression level, if we can measure aggression levels, okay, say for example, on average people have 60. Okay, the level of aggression is 60. Say for example, I am aggressive, and then personality traits perspective researchers want to look at my aggressiveness levels, and they will measure and they will compare my score according to different score of average other people. Okay, whether I am higher than average or lower than average people. Okay, the trait approach, mostly focus on mathematical or statistical oriented based research due to its emphasis on the amount, okay, the number. So every personality is the product of a particular combination of a few basic and primary traits. So remember, when we look at different taxonomies, they are super traits, okay, they are sub traits, they are narrower traits, okay, they are habits, they are specific action. So according to personality trait perspective, our personality traits are the combination of a couple of few basics or the super traits as well as the primary traits. Okay, in this perspective, personality traits mostly use mathematical or quantitative approach to understand people, individual personality traits. Okay, the second assumption of personality trait perspective, which also can be considered as the issues in the theoretical perspective, is the assumption that our personality trait is consistent over times, which is we will always have those kind of tendency to behave in certain way, to feel a certain way, and to think a certain way regardless of time. Okay, say for example, currently you are emotional, okay, which means that previously in the last 2 years you also emotional, in the last year you also emotional, in the last month you also prone to be emotional. Why? Our personality trait is consistent over times. Okay, research has found that there are a degree of stability in personality traits over time. Okay, there are many research has found that people who have a certain personality traits, they will always have those kind of personality traits across times. Although a trait might be stable over times, the manifestation of our personality traits in behavior may change considerably. Okay, say for example, I still consider myself as shy, but now the way I manifested my shyness, okay, my tendency to feel afraid, okay, social anxiety, I am a bit reluctant to be in the eyes of the public center of attention, okay, might have different manifestation. I behave it indifferently. Why? Because we've learned more, we grow up, we are more experienced, we have more experience, we're meeting more people, we've learned more. So there are other aspects that influence the manifestation, but the tendency is always there. Okay, the personality traits is always there. So there are questions or dilemma or conflicts whereby researchers has been asking, how about personality traits which are affected by the development of a person? Okay, when we age, okay, when we growing up, there are personality aspect of ourselves which also changing due to our maturity, for example, okay, such as our temperament, okay, how we react when we do not get what we have. If you look at your younger brothers, okay, siblings who are still toddlers or still young children, okay, when they do not get what they ask for, what they desire, they show their temper, okay, they show their temper tantrum, okay, they show emotion, okay, they show that they are disappointed or sometimes they cry. Okay, the focus of this type of question in this kind of personality traits, Why? Because most of people, okay, most of individuals, when they are growing up, they are able to control their emotion more. Okay, they are able to regulate their emotion more. So psychologists are asking, how can there be a stability in terms of our personality traits that is known to change with age? Okay, for example, given in your textbook is impulsivity. So according to personality trait psychologists, for them, it's not about how much our personality in that sense, okay, how much our temperament, our tendency in that sense, but the focus is to compare with other people. If you take two people, okay, who basically have temperament during their growing up, okay, say for example, their tendency to feel frustrated, excuse me, okay, their tendency to feel frustrated when their request is not entertained. Okay, if you take two people, okay, when they are growing up, person A, they say for example, they get this frustration 90 out of 100. Okay, at the age of 15 years old, for example. The person B got 60 out of 100 at the age of 15 years old because of their frustration. When they reach 25 years old, 10 years later, even though the person A have reduced or have already may be able to control his frustration, so his frustration score from 90 now becomes 60. Okay, so 30% difference. So accordingly, they're supposed to be more or less similar to the person B. However, because of this aging process, this maturity process take place for both of them, who previously aged 15 years old, now both aged 25 years old. So the second person may have a lower personality traits in the sense of frustration, okay, tendency to feel frustrated when requests are not met. Okay, for example, okay, previously person A from 90 score to 60, and person B from 60 maybe to 40 or 30. Okay, so the consideration here, when people question, okay, how come stability happens to those personality traits that are being affected by this growing up process, this aging up process. So the concern is on the rank order, whereby people who have high personality trait when they are young, okay, they will still have high, even though not as high as compared to previously, but still higher as compared to the other person who have a lower personality trait. Okay, compared to person A to person B, when they are 15 years old, person A have 90 score, person B have 60 score. When they are 25 years old, person A have 60 score, person B have 60 score. So still relatively higher, even though they are maturing during these 10 years. Okay, focus of this stability over time should be on the rank order differences among people. Okay, people in general can show a decrease in impulsiveness as they get older. Yet those individuals who were the most impulsive at the earlier age are still the ones who are most impulsive at a later age, even though with reduced score. Okay, the next issue is consistency across situation as compared to the consistency over time, which have many empirical support. Consistency across situation give more debates or have caused more debates among psychologists on this issue. So trait psychologists traditionally assume that cross-situational consistency, which means that if person have a certain personality traits, regardless of situation, they will always have the same traits. Okay, for examples, people who have these friendliness traits, okay, who are friendly, so they will be friendly in the class, they will be friendly in their college, they will be friendly when meeting new people, they will be friendly when they are in a social event. Okay, they will always be a friendly person. However, they are the impacts of situation, okay, situational influence or environmental influence on people behavior. Okay, if you are in a situation whereby you are being observed. For example, in the classroom, you do not show, okay, you do not show your friendliness traits when you are in class, okay, because you're afraid, for example, being asked question or being asked to present, for example. So in this sense, okay, in this case, if situation control how people behave, then the existence or the relevance of trait is questionable, because personality traits supposedly being consistent over time, over different situations. If you are friendly, if you are talkative, you should be talkative in the class, you should be talkative in your meetings with your friend, you should be talkative in your college, you should be talkative in your family. But what happened when you join class, for example, you no longer become talkative. So in this sense, situation, okay, the situation whereby you are in class, so that affects your talkativeness tendency, okay, how much you talk. It shows that situation hold more powerful influence to our behavior. So people question then, what is the purpose of personality in that sense? So Husman and May 1982, they reported low cross-situational correlations for the traits of honesty, helpfulness and self-control. So there are evidence whereby researchers such as Houston and May, they found that it may not necessarily be consistent. Okay, our personality traits, sometimes they are changeable. Okay, our tendency to talk a lot, our tendency to laugh a lot, our tendency to be aggressive are depending on situation. Okay, so this further being supported by Michel 1968, which suggested that personality psychologists should abandon, should abandon their efforts to explain behavior with traits. Instead, they should focus more on situation. Why? Because according to the studies that they're being conducted, according to the books written by Michel, personality trait is not as a powerful predictor of behavior as compared to situation. Okay, people who believe that situation is more important to influence individual behavior, they are being considered as situationism. Okay, a school of thought which believe that situation is more powerful predictor as compared to personality traits. So situationisms, according to them, if behavior varies across situations, then situational differences, not personality traits, determine behavior. Okay, if we behave differently in different situations, it shows that situation is the one who influence our behavior, not our personality, not our personality traits. So Michel findings and his conclusion encourage or give birth to the debate about the importance of traits in comparisons to situation to influence individual behavior. Okay, after long debates, after long consideration, both school of thought, the situationisms and personality traits, okay, these two school of thoughts, they have changed their standing, they have changed their belief and opinions. Okay, for trait psychologists, they started to acknowledge the importance of situation. Okay, it's not only personality traits that determine our behavior, they are also the influence of environments, the influence of situation where someone's that at that particular times are living or staying or doing things. And at the same times, situationists, okay, people who believes about situationisms, also acknowledge the importance of personality traits. Okay, so these phenomena, these historical events have given two more perspectives. Okay, these debates led to two lasting changes in the issue and the theoretical issues of personality traits. Okay, because, why? Because people started to pay more attention to the person-situation interactions. Okay, in other words, our behavior is the result, okay, the result of the interactions between the situation and our personality, and the practice of aggregation, whereby we do not look at one particular incident, okay, in a particular situation. Instead, we look at the average, okay, most of the time what is the tendency of the behavior of a certain people. Okay, not on one particular situation. Okay, the person situation interaction, first of all, they assume that there are two possible explanations for a person or individual behavior. Our behavior is the result of our personality traits, or our behavior is the function of a situational forces. Okay, it could be because of two reasons. Okay, why we behave in a certain way in any given situation might be because of our personality traits, or might be because of situational forces. Okay, so the perspective of interaction, okay, interaction, person, situation, interaction, personality and situation, they actually interact to produce behavior. They are conditioned on our personality. They are also conditioned on our situation. Depending on someone's personality traits and depending on a certain situation, they will produce a certain behavior. So differences among people make a difference only under certain circumstances. Okay, so there are 5 situations where they exist, okay, where the interaction between personality traits and situation happen, and people will change, okay, will behave in a certain way because of this interaction. So interaction of personality traits and situation could happen in situational specificity, strong situation, situational selection, evocation, and manipulation. So we look at one by one. So situational specificity, certain situation can provoke behavior that is out of character for a person. Okay, so given a certain situation, okay, this is highly related to strong situation. Say for example, you are talkative, you are very friendly, you like to talk, you like to sing, you like to make jokes. But when you come to exam, okay, you do not behave that way. Why? Because that situation requires a specific response, a specific behavior. So you do not behave in accordance to your personality traits. Okay, or you go to funeral. Okay, funeral, someone has died, some of your family members. So even though you like to talk to a person, talk to people, chit chat, okay, to like to greet people who you haven't met for quite a long times, but you do not do that during funeral. Why? Because the situation specific requires you a specific way of behaving. Second situation, strong situation, situation in which most people react in similar ways. Okay, consistent with the situation specificity. When situations are weak or ambiguous, our behavior would be the strongest factor that influence by our personality traits. Okay, on the other hand, when the situation are strong, so we behave because of that situation. In a situation which is weak, which is ambiguous, which is normal, which is casual, we will behave according to our personality traits. Okay, the third situation is situational selection. A tendency for people to choose or select situation in which one find oneself. Okay, this is basically true for people who have low self-esteem, for example. People say that people who have low self-esteem, they are socially isolated. Okay, they don't want to be in social setting. They don't want to talk to people. They want to stay alone. Okay, people who are introvert, for example. That is not necessarily true. Okay, they are also talkative. They also talk with friends. They also share with friends. But it takes times to build trust, to whom they can talk to whom they can share to. Okay, so they are depending on the situational selection. Okay, it's not depending on the all average or in most of the times. Next is evocation. Certain personality traits may evoke specific responses from the environment. Okay, let's say you know someone who are hypocrite. Okay, maybe it could be among you, it could be someone that you've known, that people know. So when these people come, even though they try to create a situation which is happening, which is entertaining, which is a lecture, because everyone have or know the person's real character, which is manipulative, everyone are giving a hostile reception, okay, or hostile response towards the person, okay, because of that person's personality traits. Or say for example, you have friends or you know someone who are very demanding, who are basically don't care about other people's personality, other people feelings. So when these people's when you meet these people, or these people come to your place, okay, come to your friends, to you guys will have a specific emotional reaction or specific response towards this person. Why? Because their personality traits evoke specific response. Okay, and the last one, manipulation. Various means by which people influence the behavior of others. Okay, the tactics of manipulation vary with personality. Okay, sometimes people are very manipulative. Some people know how to play the politics, in the sense of it's not the national levels of politics, but the politics in a situation whereby they can manipulate people emotion. They can create a situation whereby people will invoke the feelings of sympathy, the feelings of sadness, the feelings of want to help, for example. Okay, if you have been in a situation or experience whereby you being scammed before, okay, yeah, a couple of times I also fall in that category of victims. So some people, some uncle, some auntie come to you and tell you the stories. Okay, he come from certain places and then he being robbed or snatched thief has basically take their belongings or take their purse or wallets, or they live with no money. Could we please help them, giving them time just for them to call their family members and etc. Okay, so that is basically the sort of manipulation whereby they create a situation and they tell you the stories, and then you are basically being sympathized. Okay, you empathize with their situation and you basically give their money. Okay, they already created, okay, the feelings of sympathy or sadness, or you are basically pity towards them. So that's a situation whereby people or certain people are able to manipulate the situation and create some tactics that makes us behave in certain way. Okay, the next one is I think this is the last one, issues in the theoretical issues, which is the aggregation. Okay, aggregation. What is aggregation? Aggregation is the process of adding up, or the process of averaging every single observations. Okay, observations here plural means that the process of adding up, the process of averaging up all of the research. Okay, there are many research, there are many studies conducted to understand, say for example, one personality traits. Okay, aggregation is the process of try to add up, try to take the average, okay, the most common situation, the most common characteristic of a personality traits. Okay, why? Because this aggregation process usually will result in a better and a more reliable measures of personality traits than a single observation of behavior. So you need to remember that both aggregation and person situation interactions is the results of the debate or the issues in the consistency across situation. Okay, when Michelle published her book, okay, so basically people started to pay more attention, okay, pay more attention to not to pay or to take only result from one observation or from one study, but to look at the average of all of other studies, so that you will get a more correct, more better and more reliable findings or meanings of personality traits. So according to aggregation perspective, longer tests which have more questions, which have more items, are more reliable than shorter ones and are better measures of traits. So basically, if we have only one questions measuring about aggression, if you have one question measuring about extrovert, it's not as good as we have one test which have many questions, okay, which can ask many characteristic, many behavior of a person. Okay, any single behavior or occasion may be influenced by extenuating circumstances unrelated to personality. Okay, if you create a certain situation, okay, say for example, someone who are very talkative, okay, they are very friendly, they like to talk, they like to share stories. Okay, when they come in classrooms, they don't behave in that way. When they are in exam situation, in exam halls, they don't behave in that way. So that situation is unrelated to their personality, because it's very it's not the most what we call the situation whereby a person will always be in that situation. Okay, it's a specific situation in a specific times. Okay, aggregation implies that traits are only one influence on behavior. Okay, so basically trait is not the only reason why we behave in certain way, but trait is one of the causal factor. There are many other factors lain. Okay, there are many other factors that will influence someone's behavior. Many factors influence why a person does one thing and no other. Okay, so aggregation also implies that traits refers to the person's average levels. Okay, it's not basically a unique one that is only happens once in his lifetime, or happen once in a year, or once in a month. Okay, we look at the average. Okay, most of the time, what is his tendency? Most of the times, what is his behavior? Most of the times, what is her feelings? Most of the time, what is her tendency to think in certain way. So we look at the situation where when people are in classroom, we look at all situations that involve the person in a situational context, in a family context. So we look at all of the average, then we can make a conclusion that that person have friendly personality traits, or that person have aggressive personality traits, or that person have extrovert or introvert personality traits. We look at the average levels. Okay, so that's all for the issues relating to theoretical perspective of personality traits. Okay, beside theoretical issues, like I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, there are also measurement issues. So we are going to discuss on 4 measurement issues involving personality traits perspective, which are carelessness, faking on questionnaire, response sets, and lastly Barnum's statement. Okay, let's look at one by one. So measurement issues. Before we look at one by one, these are some earlier introduction of measurement issues. The trait approach. Okay, people or psychologists or personality psychologists who investigate or try to understand our personality from the perspective of personality traits, they rely mostly on self-report questionnaire. Okay, they rely on the questionnaires to measure individuals' personality. Okay, although there are many other measurement methods, like we mentioned, there are projective tests, there are behavioral observations, there are experiments, but questionnaires are the most frequently used method for understanding, measuring, and evaluating individuals' personality. So in this sense, measuring personality traits using self-report questionnaires assume that people are generally willing and able to report their personality accurately. Okay, they are able to report anything about their behavior honestly and truthfully. However, we know that it's not necessarily applicable to everyone. Okay, some people may be unwilling to disclose some information about themselves, or may be motivated for some other reasons to change or to adapt or to modify their answers when they try to answer the self-report questionnaire. So they might be falsifying, they might be faking, or they might be lying about their answers. We don't know why, but we have to admit that it's happened. So basically, when that happened, it against the assumption of personality traits that using self-report questionnaire, people will give their truth answer. Okay, so trait psychologists, they, even when they know, when they realize and they admit and acknowledge these issues, they are concerned with the circumstances that will affect the accuracy, the reliability, the validity, and the utility of personality traits assessment or personality trait measures. Okay, so one of the issues of using self-report questionnaires to investigate personality traits of a person is carelessness. So by the name stand itself, okay, the carelessness. So some participants, they filling out a trait questionnaire. Okay, when they answer the survey, when they answer the questionnaire, they might not be motivated to answer it carefully and to answer it in details. Okay, they don't really pay attention, they just want to answer. It's happened a lot. Okay, sometimes cute girls ask you, sir, I'm doing this assignment for this subject for this lecturer, could you please answer this survey? And then we are too shy or too ashamed to reject her request, and then we entertain. But we are so tired sometimes, we don't have much energy left, so we just answer it for the sake of answering it. We don't really read, we don't really pay attention to the question. Sometimes we don't even understand what answer that we put there. So sometimes a cute girl and a handsome guy approach you, and then you don't have the heart to deny him, to deny her, and you accept the request, but you don't give a correct answer, a proper answer. So the participant is not reading the question sometimes, they don't read it carefully, but nevertheless they still answer, or they still give response. Okay, so it's basically carelessness. So their answer is not really correct. They're not representing their own behavior, their own personality traits. So there are many ways that we can detect carelessness. Okay, among others, we can embed infrequency scale, or we can include duplicate items in our test. Okay, so in brief, how can we detect carelessness answers in our study, in our research? One, we can decide, say for example, you are doing research about agreeableness. Okay, agreeableness, you want to know what is the levels of agreeableness among university students or among sharp students, for example. So what you do, beside this test of agreeableness, you also include another test which we call infrequency scale. Okay, infrequency scale. So what is this infrequency scale all about? So infrequency scale contains questions or contains items that most people answer in a particular way. Okay, say for example, if you ask people, okay, how many states in Malaysia? Okay, of course that will be totally different from agreeableness. Okay, you ask people, do people have the feeling of love? So basically everyone have the feeling of love. It's very rare to find someone who don't have those feelings. Okay, so you include in this infrequency scales just to make sure that when your respondent answer your agreeableness scale, they really pay attention. Okay, if say for example they answer it wrong, it shows that they don't pay attention when they answer your scale. So might probably you have to omit or you have to reject their answer. If you know, I think most of you familiar with CAPTCHA. Okay, CAPTCHA, when you registering or you want to log in to certain website that you have registered before, so the website will ask a certain question. Previously, it's very monotonous way of capturing or giving password to make sure that you are human logging to their website. Okay, previously they give numbers. Okay, they ask you to calculate. Nowadays it's very creative. They ask how many legs a dog have. Okay, how many hands a cat have, for example. So it's very specific questions whereby everyone will answer the same way. Okay, there is no effects or there is no influence of personality in that question. So we have a very established infrequency scale. So what happens is we can include this infrequency scale in our test of agreeableness, just to make sure that when people answer it, people pay attention and people give a real answer. The second way on how can we detect carelessness answers is to duplicate items. Okay, say for example you have one questions. Okay, in the events of require people to discuss, I will be giving my opinion. Okay, strongly agree to strongly disagree. So what happened is this question already there, but you give the same question again towards the end of the survey, of the questionnaire. So same items spaced far apart in the questionnaire. So supposedly if the person read the questions, so and he or she will remember that she answered agree or she answered disagree. But say for example the first question that you put, the first question in the questionnaire, the person answers strongly agree, and then in the last one they answer strongly disagree. It shows that they don't pay attention. Okay, they answer it not careful manner, they don't pay attention. So may as well we have to omit, or we have to exclude their answer script from our analysis. So that is the first measurement issue, which is carelessness. The second measurement issue is faking answer. Okay, faking answer. So faking is basically respondents, they lie, okay, they fake their answer to look either to look good or to look bad from their real state. Say for example, some personality traits that people don't desire to have. Okay, being emotional, for example. You might be someone who are emotional. Sometimes the questions are very tricky, that you yourself find that if I answer this, I know people will know that I am emotional. Okay, how many times you feel angry when someone cut your line in traffic jams? Okay, I know that if I answer that almost every time, okay, I know that people will know that I am basically emotional. Okay, so I don't answer it every time. I answer it a couple of times a week, or maybe seldom, okay, or rare, as opposed to answer it often. I answer it very rare, for example. So very rare. So I'm faking my answer. I'm not telling the truth. So there are two types of faking, which is faking good and faking bad. Okay, faking good, we attempt to appear better, or we attempt to look good, okay, when in fact we are the other way around. Or faking bad, we attempt to look bad, but in fact we are not that bad. Okay, for example, so people say that people who are perfectionists, okay, when they like to exaggerate, okay, their weaknesses, for example, they are not that bad, but they consider they are the worst people on earth. For example, talking about myself, I am not perfectionist. So faking bad. So in this sense, faking can involve that someone who want to look good, or someone who want to look bad. So how can we detect fake answers? So there is one method being explained in your textbook, whereby this method already been used by Kettle et al. When they developed 16 PF questionnaire, okay, 16 personality factors questionnaire. So how they do it? So after they already develops, okay, the questions, so they ask two sets of people, okay, one set of participants. They instruct the participants, I want you to answer this 16 PF questionnaire, and I want you to pretend to be the best people on earth, okay, the best people ever. Okay, so these people answer based on the instruction. So another group of participants, they instruct these participants, the second groups, to answer the questionnaire, the 16 PF questionnaire, and they want them to answer to be the worst people on earth. Okay, the baddest, okay, the most negative people who they may think of. So one is basically they want to create a profile of faking good. Okay, the group one. The group two, they want to create a profile of faking bad. So basically after they answer it, so they compile it, so they have two templates, or two criteria, or two template of answers of faking good and faking bad. Okay, one faking good, one faking bad. So when new respondents answer it, they will compare. Okay, say for example, next I answer the 16 PM score. Okay, you are the administrator. So after you receive my answer, you will compare my answer with the template of faking good answer and the template of faking bad answer. So you are expecting that there is no correlation, there is no relationship, there is no similarity between my answer and either one, between with the faking good templates or faking bad templates. So if there is no correlation, then you will accept my answer. Otherwise, if say for example my answer is highly similar to the faking good templates or faking good answers, it shows that when I am answering, I am faking my answers. Therefore, you will not accept my answer. Okay, that is the second issues, or the second measurement issues, which is the faking of answers in questionnaire. The next issue of measurement is response sets. Okay, so the term is not really conveying what actually the problem here. Okay, the problem of response sets, or some people or some psychologists call it as non-content responding. So people are answering not based on the item, not based on the question asked. Okay, the tendency of some people to respond to the questions on the basis that is unrelated to the question. Okay, unrelated to the items, unrelated to the content. So they answer it based on what? Okay, so they answer it because of four factors. Okay, four factors. Excuse me. Okay, one is yay-sayer, second, nay-sayer, third, extreme responding, and fourth, social desirability. Okay, so what is yay-sayer? Okay, some people, when they answer whatever questions, they have this tendency to answer everything on the yes spectrum. Okay, say for example, we have strongly agree and agree. So these people, regardless of the question, regardless of the content, they will answer either this one, agree or strongly agree, agree or strongly agree, agree or strongly agree. Okay, so they don't answer based on the question asked. They don't answer based on their own emotion, own thinking or own behavior. They just want to answer yes or agree or strongly agree. Okay, there is yay-sayer. Some people have this tendency. Another type is nay-sayer. Okay, is the opposite of yay-sayer. The tendency to answer no to all statements. Okay, it's not about the contents, it's not about the questions, it's not about the behavior, it's not based on their emotion and thinking, it's based on their tendency of nay-sayer. Some psychologists think that yay and nay-sayer also personality traits. Okay, some people have this trait that they want to disagree to everything, or they just is the follower where they agree to everything, yay-sayer or nay-sayer. Another one is the extreme responding. Okay, the tendency to choose the end point of response. Okay, I think you by now you are already familiar with the sums of the questionnaires people ask you to answer survey or questionnaires. So the most common one is strongly disagree, neither agree nor disagree, or not sure, agree or to strongly agree. There are some people when they answer it, okay, if they agree, they will put strongly agree. If they disagree, they will put strongly disagree. There is no answer for them to put disagree only or agree only. Okay, they will put the extreme score. The positive one, strongly agree only. The negative one, strongly disagree only. There is no basically the middle one, neutral or not sure. There is no agree or disagree only. They will only put on the both extreme score. If you ask them to rate from 1 to 10, their answers will either be 10 or 1. There is no 5, there is no 6, there is no 7, there isn't 4, there is no 3. Okay, they will put on the extreme score. Okay, and the last one response is social desirability. Okay, what is social desirability? The tendency to answer items in such a way as to come across as socially attractive or likable. Okay, in the simpler words, what is social desirability? The social desirability is our tendency to answer according to what people expect it as good, what people expect it as likable, what people expect it as attractive. Okay, say for example, we want to know personality of someone's or attitudes towards pets or cat in this sense. If you ask male, macho man, for example, so ask men, do you like cats? Do you like to pet cats? Okay, even though the persons don't like cats, hate cats so much, but he knows that women or girls like men who are sensitive. Okay, for example, sensitive. So they will say that yes. Okay, they will answer that strongly agree. I like to pet cats, even though they hate cats so much. So why? Because of social desirability. Okay, sometimes actually, what is the difference between social desirability and facting good or facting bad? Social desirability is from what other people want them to be. Okay, so it's not based on their own judgment. So say for example, nowadays we have the conflicts between Russia and Ukraine. Okay, I'm not going politics here, but say for example, most people are supporting Ukraine and you are supporting Russia. So when people ask you, do you support Russia? You say, no, I'm support Ukraine. Why? Because of social desirability. Everyone want to support Russia or want to support Ukraine, and then you are the only one want to support Russia, so you change your answers to follow their social perspective. Okay, so the last one, measurement issues. Issues surrounding measurement issue is Barnum statements. Okay, Barnum statements involve the interpretation of personality scores. Okay, remember, Barnum statements involve the interpretation of personality traits measurement scores or personality traits assessment scores. So what is Barnum statements? Barnum statements are the generalities. Okay, the general statements that could be applied to anyone. Okay, to anyone's. This is what happened a lot in Malaysia. People like pseudoscience. Okay, pseudopsychology. Okay, psychology not based on the true psychology. Okay, people test their personality based on their blood type. People believe their personality based on their number of birth. Okay, they are second child, they are the third child, they are the oldest child, for example. Or people believe personality based on months. Okay, the months they're being born. Okay, July, August, January, February. So these are all pseudoscience. Okay, pseudopsychology, psychological perspective that not based on a real psychology, not based on science. Okay, so Barnum statements also sometimes involved in those kinds of scenario. So example of Barnum statements, you sometimes have doubts about whether you have done the right thing or you have done the wrong thing. You have a need for others to like or admire you. Okay, it does really sound like a personality interpretation of your personality, but these statements are basically applicable to everyone. So what is the difference between you who have high in agreeableness and between people who have high in conscientiousness? What is the difference between people who have high extroversion and people who have high in introversion, or people who have high in openness or high in neuroticism, for example? Because these statements are applicable to everyone. So there is no difference. There is the danger of the risk of making Barnum's general statements. Okay, psychologists, you are need to avoid from making Barnum statements when providing interpretation of personality scores. And usually our interpretation, the meanings of our personality scores, our personality trait scores, should be based on solid empirical evidence, based on research findings. Casual interpretation based on logic must be avoided. Okay, so I think that's all for the discussion on the theoretical issues and measurement issues. So in a nutshell, in this lecture, we have discussed on the two subcategories or subpoints, which is theoretical issues and measurement issues. Under theoretical issues, we have looked into the meaningful differences between individuals. We look at personality as consistent over times. we look at personality trait as consistent across situation. Okay, under that we also look into person situation interaction, and we look into aggregation. Okay, in the measurement issues, we look at the issues of carelessness. Okay, we also look at the issues of faking questionnaires, and we look at the response sets. There are 5 types there, and then we look at the danger or the risk of Barnum's statements. Okay, that's all for the discussion. Thank you very much. See you next time.